This is just a video about building a little cart to put my new Cabela's Dehydrator on. It'll get it up just high enough to be counter height. And I had some leftover scraps of cherry that I had grown in my backyard and cut. And, they were just left over from other jobs that I decided to use. And so this is the assortment of lumber that I'm going to use. Now it's time to just kind of turn it into something that's actually usable. And I always forget to retension that blade before I use the bandsaw. But anyhow, because you can kind of hear the wheel slip if you hit the on button. But so I'm just going to start, just ripping off. These are some live edge pieces that I had left over. And I just, I'm trying to get them down to under an 8-inch square type piece so I can just run it on my joiner. So I'm just cutting the live edges off to prepare the stock. And that's it doesn't take long. It's a pretty quick job. And then in the end, I wind up with some pieces of firewood too, so some good kindling wood. So, a lot of times people ask me why I show all these steps preparing the lumber, but some people only watch one of my videos, and if you don't see the other ones, you really don't know exactly what's going on. So here I am taking all those strips now that are cut down to under 8 inches, so they'll fit on my joiner there, and getting one nice flat smooth side. There you can see it's some beautiful cherries. It's amazing what can grow in your backyard. And then I wound up just they were all different thicknesses and stuff, so I wound up making multiple passes through the planer to kind of bring them all down to the same thickness that I needed for the size and stuff of this. So there they are. Most of them are done there. You can see all ready to go. And then I went to feed the top pieces through to bring them down to 3/4 of an inch, and my planer shut down. It just got halfway through, and all of a sudden it stopped. So I took it all apart, looked inside there, and there was a screw with 2 wires hanging loose off of the contactor there in that little starter box. And once I tightened that screw down, everything was fine again. And seems like it's nothing but electrical problems lately. So, here it is. I've got those top pieces now that I'm going to glue up. And as with any time I glue 2 boards together, I always use biscuits in them. It's a super quick and easy way to, add a little bit of extra strength and some really good alignment when you put them together. That way nothing really slips or anything. So same thing, I use this Type Bond glue on pretty much everything I glue up, and just the little silicone brushes really help with spreading the glue. They're real easy to use to spread the glue with, and even it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but then you just let it harden up on them, and you just stretch the bristles out a little bit, and all the hard glue comes right out. So you can use them over and over again, and they're really great to have around. And just clamp it up, and then take a chisel and scrape off some of the extra glue and a damp paper towel, and check it for flatness, and everything looks really good on this piece now. So this is going to be the top that the Dehydrator actually sits on. It's kind of a shame because there's some real beautiful character in the wood, but you won't see any of it anyway. And now it's time to just start squaring it up. And last time I used my miter gauge here, I actually had it on a 45, or 60 maybe it was, and got to go back and get it set. And I find this miter set gauge really is helpful. I get like perfect cuts every time when I use this thing. So it's another one of the little shop helpers I really recommend. And you can see that little piece of plastic I put out there on the front of the saw really makes a big difference too when you're cutting wide stock like this. Kind of have to be careful that you push the miter gauge straight through, because the aluminum bar, if you put any side pressure on it, can wander. So you want to do a nice smooth even pressure on it going straight. And then once I got the one side cut square, I'm just gonna trim up the other. And then it's back over to the sanding table to just do a little bit of cleanup on the joints. And when you use the biscuits, they always come out just about perfect, so there's more just to get the glue marks off and stuff like that. And then I wanted to match the front of the door of the dehydrator with the front of this cabinet. So I took a piece of 1/4-inch plywood, went up and traced the door front on it. Then I went down and I've got this 2-foot long aluminum yard and a little bit more stick. And I used some of those, these were picture frame clamps that, they're actually a 4-corner clamp, but I just used 2 of the corner pieces. And then I used a couple of the threaded pieces that go together to tension that ruler there. And that actually gives me the correct shape that I want to, follow. You can actually just adjust it and get exactly what you want. And then it's just a matter of just tracing it onto the front of the piece. So I'm hoping it'll look a little bit better with the, just kind of matching in the front. So there it is, and you can see there the ruler pops right out, and then you can just take this apart and store it in the drawer. So it's a real easy way to get a nice consistent curve of any size. Then it's back over to the bandsaw. Time to just roughly cut those shapes out, and I'm just gonna leave maybe about a 1/16 of an inch back to the line there. I'm not gonna cut them perfectly tight to the line because it's I got like a 5/8 blade on the bandsaw that not the best thing for cutting smooth curves or anything like that. I just trimmed that up and just left the line on, and then I was over to this jet oscillating sander to kind of smooth everything up and bring it right exactly down to the line. Now this is one of those tools that one of the last tools that I purchased, but now that I've been using it for a while, it's really one of the earlier tools that I should have purchased because it's just such a handy machine to have in the shop. And originally I thought I was going to have problems with that turning mechanism on it and stuff, or laying it down flat, but it turns out once I got it set up for exactly 90, I just haven't had a reason to lay it flat, and it's it's always used for edging and stuff like this. So I don't see that as being a problem at all anymore because I'm probably never going to lay it flat. But I got that radius in, and then I drew some radiuses on the corners there, and just I'm going to sand them right off. So it's really a great machine to have for this kind of work. Once I got all those radius blended in and stuff, it's time to go back over, and I decided I was going to put a double bead on all around the top and bottom edge of this top to match that other cabinet that I made a little while back. So you can see with cherry it's kind of tough. Cherry and maple are tough to cut shapes like this on because you try to run a bit as slow as you can, but you really any spot that you kind of slow down the feed or anything, you do get little burning marks. So you really have to try to keep a constant feed when you're doing this, and keep a slow speed on as slow a speed as you can keep it at to get a good cut. So I'm just I just flipped it over, and now I'm going to do the same thing with another one of these bead bits. And that doesn't take long. And then you can see the burn spots, several burn spots along there where I actually slowed down the feed. But the good thing is cherry's soft and you can sand them right out. Then another trick I found out is I ran out of fine sandpaper for my little 4.5-inch block sander there. And I figured out that I could just use my 6-inch discs from the bigger Porter Cable sander. And they, covered it good. So there's the basic top all ready to go. Kind of a shame it's all going to be hidden, but that's the way it works out. And now it's time I've got another couple of figured pieces, and I'm putting together the drawer front now. This is going to be the whole front of the cart. So same thing as with any glue up I do. I put biscuits in, and I really have to recommend having one of these tools if you're going to do a lot of woodworking. And then just another glue up here, same thing, just glue, biscuits, and a couple clamps. And then wipe off the extra glue, and then I just take a damp paper towel and clean it up. You can Now they're the side pieces for the cabinet. I decided I want the grain on them to run the short way because I want all the grain going in the same direction for seasonal wood movement on this cart, so nothing stretches apart, no joints come apart later. So I just kind of glued them up, and then it was time to go back and just cut them to size. So I started with the, cutting them square and along the long side there with the that Craig jig, and then I'm gonna go back and just set the fence and cut them to the same length there. You can see jobs like this actually do generate a lot of extra little firewood starter blocks. And then I'm just going to set up on the miter gauge here, that Craig miter gauge, and do the final cut. So now I have a rectangle with all perfectly square edges on it. So that's ready to go on to the next step. And one thing I can say is that a 40-tooth blade that a combination blade that I put on a while back is just my favorite blade. It just works so good. And now I decided to change the filters in my little sanding table there because all that walnut that I sanded on the last job kind of plugged them up, and they're getting to that, the airflow was starting to slow down a little bit. So it just takes 2 seconds to pop out the old ones and put the new ones in, and then get right back to sanding there. So just a little bit of cleanup, and then I decided to take the easy way out for putting this whole little assembly together and using the Craig pocket screws. That Craig jig is really a handy thing to have. You could see my drill bit actually has been used so much. I have 2 of these drill bits, and they're both getting dull now. It's time to pick up another one because I don't really know how you can sharpen them and kind of maintain that point and everything. So, but this is another one of those little tools that once you get it, you don't know how you lived without it. It's just so easy to mount anything at 90 degrees. And now I'm going to go back and I put the dado cutter on the table saw there, and I'm just starting to cut some of the dados in the sides there to lock everything together. Along the bottom edge here, I'm just cutting a 1/2-inch groove to put the caster supports in. And this is the point in time when you really have to start making sure you have some marks on the pieces and stuff so that you're cutting them in the right locations, because you have a left hand and a right hand side that are basically mirror images. So this is where you have to be a little bit careful when you're doing that. So first I got that one groove cut in, then I went back and I started cutting some grooves for the slides to sit in. So I had to, actually they were 1.8 inches wide, so I had to actually step the fence a couple times and make a couple passes with the dado head. But I figured that the slides, there they are, I figured the slides, you can see how the grain is on this, and I figured I wanted to retain the slides with 1 screw in the front and then just a 1 screw in the back slot of the slide. And I wanted something so that it would have to, it would always stay aligned without having to fight the movement of the wood. So there it is, there's one side, and the little table saw blocks help too. Now I had to cut the 2 caster supports, and in the past, before I got the bandsaw, I used to just take there's a piece of like 7/8 wood, and I used to just take and run it through the planer until I got down to the 1/2 inch that I needed. But it's really nice being able to just throw it on the bandsaw and resaw it now, so I can actually wind up with a nice piece of clear veneer to use later on another job. So I want them a 1/2 inch thick, and I'm just cutting about 60 thousandths over sides there. You can see that came out real nice. And this was like a 3/4 inch piece I had, so I'm just cutting a real thin slice off of it. But it will be usable in the future, and it won't be just chips like it used to be. And once you get the saws tuned up right, it's really easy to do stuff like this. And I don't even have a really good blade. I'm just running a 5/8 blade on there. Just a regular sawing blade, not a resaw blade. So there it is, that's cut. And you can see that, I do have some nice pieces left over. And then it's over to the planer and just go back and take them down to the final 1/2 inch. And that little Wixie gauge on the planer really is a great help too to, hit the numbers that you want and hit them dead on every time. I just thought I'd show you this. I'm taking the Dado blades off the saw, and a while back I built this cabinet to store them, and I must say if anybody has a couple blades and a nice Dado set, it really does pay to build something to organize and store them in, because it really helps keep them accessible and also keeps them from getting chips in the carbide. So here we are. I just kind of threw it together now to clamp it together just to start mounting get the caster holes and pocket holes for joining everything together. And I purchased these casters on Amazon. Actually, they're a real nice little caster. They weren't that expensive, and they said they had 100-pound capacity each for 1.5 inch caster, which I feel is really good. This cart should hold 400 pounds if they work the way they should. Then at my dollar store, I found some really nice burrs. I actually found a couple of these Ace Hardware Made in America square framing squares for $1 each. They did have some imperfections in them and stuff, but the squareness of them was actually dead on, so I didn't really care if there was a little mark on them or anything. And they had like probably 150 of them stacked up there. I just grabbed 2 of them because that's all I could use. And now it's time to go back and drill the pocket holes, and I've never done pocket holes in 1/2 inch thick material before. This is my first attempt at them, and actually they did come out pretty good. You can see the drill didn't quite break all the way through there, but it looks like they'll work. And you have to use those little smaller head screws when you do this, so the head doesn't, that big washer on the head doesn't stick out. But in the end, these Craig screws really make everything so much easier putting things together. I mean, if you can hide them. Now, I need some radiuses on the bottom of those sides there, and I did the same thing, but I just used 2 of those pieces of threaded rod, and I used a 2-foot stainless steel ruler there that has a nice, even flex in it. So you just, set the distance between the clamps and adjust it to get the radius that you want. And I'll just mark one side, and you see I have the 2 pieces together, so I can just index the other one right off of that and get the kind of like the exact same radius in there. So that's a real good way to get some nice, smooth curves in. And back over to the bandsaw, and the same thing. I'm just going to cut outside of the line, try to leave about a 1/16 of an inch there for sanding. Just because I don't have a really good blade on there for cutting curves and stuff like that. Plus, it's not the smoothest cutting blade either. So with those radiuses cut, I'm going to go back and use some double-sided tape. I've got a bunch of this for my CNC router, and whenever I'm trying to get 2 pieces to be identical and I'm sanding them, I always just kind of stick them together with some of this double-sided tape. And you can see, you just line them up on a flat edge there like that, and stick them together. And then when you go back and you start sanding them, they're both going to be identical, and they're going to really it does help to make sure everything's square and stuff. So here I've put that extra table on this jet oscillating belt sander. You can see that really works great too. But trouble is, when you use this table, you do eat a lot of sawdust. Luckily, I love the smell of cherry sawdust. It's just amazing. But that sander really is, it really is a great machine to have in the shop, and it does a really good job on stuff like this too. Then I'm just going to pry it apart and take the tape off now. So now with all the pieces cut, it's time to just go back and just start doing a dry run to see how everything's going to fit in the line and whatnot before I start really doing the final gluing and screwing on it. So there you can see the those caster supports kind of go in those grooves in the bottom. I thought about making a full bottom in this, but I decided in the end I didn't really need it. So that's what it's going to look like, and everything's lines up good. So it's time to go back and start doing a little bit of gluing and screwing on it. So I don't really need glue on the edge of these pieces, but I'm going to put drop on there anyway just for a little bit extra help in the future. And you can see everything on this project, all the grain is going in the same direction so that there'll be no problems with expansion and contraction in the future. That's kind of why I selected this wood, and this is the way I'm putting it together. So, first kind of got everything lined up, clamped, and then just went back, put a couple of those pocket hole screws in just once I know everything was seated properly and the glue was squished down. And I didn't trust these little screws to pull everything in tight because they're just, they got a little head that you don't want to put too much pressure on. So I figured I'd clamp it first and then just put them in snug like that. And actually, they worked really good, and they sat up in the wood so they were flush and everything. So I was putting this together right about now. Half the power in my house actually went out. Luckily, the basement lights were on the leg that stayed on. And we had to have the electric company come in, and it turned out that we've got a bad feeder wire to our house. One leg is actually not moving any power, so got some big problems that I decided to break this up into 2 videos. So this is the first part here, and I'm not sure when I'll have 220 back to be able to run all my machines and stuff. So it may be 2 weeks or it may be 4 weeks. I'm not sure. It depends on working with the contractors and the electric company engineers and stuff. So I just thought I'd break this into 2 at this point. So I got got all those pocket hole screws in there, and you can see they actually pulled it together pretty good. And they really are easy to do, and they're really a very strong joint once you get them in there. So now it's time to put the sides there onto the top. I got everything glued up. Not glued up. I didn't use any glue on this. I made some spacers to square everything up and checked it for squareness and stuff. And then I'm just going right up through the side there. You can see with the pocket hole screws to hold it all together. That should be plenty. And then I had a bunch of them that I couldn't get in at with the drill. And they were real easy to just take and put them in with a little ratchet. All you need is a 1/4-inch ratchet, a 1/4-inch socket, and one of the square drive bits. And that's an easy way to put them in quickly too, when you just can't get a drill in place. So I pretty much got that all screwed together, and back to just put the casters on and make sure they clear everything and stuff, because they have to, be able to swing around and stuff. And about the only thing that I'm missing right now is going to be the back panel that goes on there. And I also waiting to get out and pick up some shorter slides. But there's basically what it's going to look like. The whole front of the panel will come out on the drawer. There's going to be a drawer down there for all the accessories for the Dehydrator. And you can see it doesn't look like it has wheels on it when you look at it. You won't be able to see them, but it'll be real easy to move around to get it away from the wall for when it's being used and stuff like that. So the casters are really kind of buried under there like that. And like I said, I really can't start the drawer yet because I need my power tools to prepare some of the lumber for the sides and stuff. But this is basically where it's at this point in time, and I'm real happy with the way it's coming out for just being some more scrap wood that I was trying to get out of my shop. And it's kind of amazing the beautiful wood that you can grow in your backyard when it comes down to it. And I really like the fact of, just having the hidden casters. And there's that front drawer. That's going to be the whole front of it when it's done. That's the front piece for the drawer. And just have to cut that to size and stuff. But just can't run any of the equipment right now. And that's going to be, just kind of be shaped to match the front there and pull out. So I just thought I'd share this much, up to this point in time. And I'm not quite sure when I'll get to finish the rest of it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.